We've been dancing around the issue. We've been talking about the issue. Let's dive into it. Why the first apron is the big thing the Magic have to avoid, and what restrictions are on the Magic this summer today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 20th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, get your pencils, get your calculators out. We're going to run the numbers. We're going to look at the Magic's cap sheet, explain why the Magic have to be careful this offseason, and what the first apron means for the Magic moving forward. We're going to get to all that, try to get to all of it, try to explain it all coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day. Every day, the Locked On Magic podcast is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm trying to prepare you. I'm trying to prepare you for the reality of what we're facing. I still see some trade ideas out there that are not real, that just aren't possible. I still see people saying, hey, why don't the Magic go sign this player or that player, that they clearly cannot. Most of you aren't like that. So this episode is going to be a little nerdy. And we talked a little bit about this with Keith Smith last week, but I want to make sure that I really hammer this point home. The era of free money for the Orlando Magic is done. The Magic are not able to spend in free agency the way that they have the last few years. And look, we're going to do, I'm hoping before the draft to do a more full appraisal of what Jeff Weltman did right and what Jeff Weltman did wrong last summer. But regardless, Jeff Weltman has always said every team's going to have to pay the piper. And while the Magic had this kind of run of free money, they were still trying to be careful to set their books up for this moment when they didn't have the free money to spend. Yes, Orlando spent last summer. Again, don't get yourself wrong. The Magic had a ton of cap room. Cap room isn't what it used to be. Free agents were not plentiful. They went out and signed a free agent that fit one of their critical needs. Overpaid for him a little bit. Yeah, sure, probably. You have to overpay in free agency. Brought him in, fit like a glove defensively, didn't fit as well. He did not shoot as well as they hoped. And then spent the rest of their offseason kind of lining up their contracts to be tradable. Remember, Jeff Weltman said, maybe you don't remember because I didn't play the full audio, but Jeff Weltman said during exit interviews that in this next phase of the Magic, it's about swapping contracts. And so how the Magic have set their books up with a lot of deals in that $10 to $15 million range is really, really valuable. It's really, really a big deal. Just so everyone's aware of this. I feel like this needs to be made aware of this. $15 million is less than 10% of the salary cap now. So we're going to throw a lot of big numbers at you today. Those numbers aren't as big as they used to be. Look, Franz Wagner is projected to make $38.7 million next year as part of the first year of his max contract. That's 25% of the cap. If the salary cap increases the way we expect it to, that number goes down. Paolo Banchero, when he signs his new extension, is, if he makes all NBA, going to make 30% of the cap. But all these numbers add up. Even Jalen Suggs' contract, all these numbers add up. And so we have to start this summer by recognizing the Magic are in a new position. How new? Let's just break it down straight away. The Orlando Magic are a tax team. For the first time since Dwight Howard, 2012, the Magic will be paying the luxury tax. Now, that is a 1.5 to 1 penalty paid to the NBA and distributed teams that are not in the tax. So the Magic stop getting that payment. And you pay a repeater after, I think it's after 3 seasons, or after three of the previous 4 seasons. So the Magic aren't in trouble. To be in the tax right now, not the biggest deal. And honestly, like, I'll go ahead and say it. When we get to the first apron stuff in our next segment, being in the first apron for a year, not a huge deal. You could live with it. You could figure it out. But here's the reality. Here are the numbers. So get your pencils, get your calculators out. Here we go. The salary cap for the 2026 season is expected to be $154.6 million. Now, remember, the new CBA, the salary cap is essentially split 50-50 between the players and the owners of basketball-related income. That 50% is the salary cap. Now, the league instituted a rule to prevent the kind of huge shock to the system that we saw in the Kevin Durant year, in the Bismack Biyombo years, we like to call it here in Orlando. The NBA is trying to prevent that huge shock, that huge cap spike. And so the cap cannot rise by more than 10% every year. So because of the new TV deal and how massive it is, we're all pretty safe. And you can pretty much plan that the cap is going to rise by 10%, by the maximum 10% for at least the next 5 years, probably longer than that. So there is a little bit of control here. But for now, the 2026 salary cap is expected to be about $154.6 million. As things stand today, according to our friends at Spot Track or any of the contract sites you look at, the Magic have approximately $175.2 million in guaranteed salary for next season. Before we get to anything else, the Magic are $21 million, or almost are $20 million over the luxury tax line. They are paying the tax next year. So 1.5 to 1 for the first $5 million and escalates from there. So that's that. Thank you to Voss family for paying that. This is the Magic are a tax team. Where there's the tricky part now is the first apron is expected to come at $195.9 million. And I'll explain what that means to be a first apron team in our next segment. But the first apron is expected to be $195.9 million. So we got about $20 million, a little bit more than $20 million to play with before you get to that first apron. And the first apron comes with a lot of restrictions. We'll get to those. But that $20 million gets eaten up pretty quickly. Mo Wagner has a team option for $11 million. Gary Harris has a team option for $8 million. That's 19 of your 20 right there. Caleb Houston has a team option for $2.2 million. And that's not including draft picks. That's not including the potential to take on more salary. We'll talk again about those rules coming up here. Even using the taxpayer mid-level exception, which are contracts totaling $5.7 million to sign new players, that's going to creep the Magic right up against that first apron line. Now, again, it feels pretty certain that Magic can stay under that apron. Because inevitably, if they go out and trade for like an Anthony Simons, who makes about $27 million, if they go out and trade for Anthony Simons, they're probably sending out Jonathan Isaac, $50 million. They could be sending out Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's $22 million. They'll take on maybe a little bit more money, but not so much money. And of those 3 team options that I just said, Mo Wagner is the only one that is guaranteed. So that gives the Magic about $9 million to work with. Again, not including draft picks. Now, draft picks are placeholder contracts at the moment. So they are part of this equation too. I don't have the rookie scale table in front of me. But yes, draft picks are part of this equation too, and that's why the Magic are bumping up right up against that first apron. So I see this comment a lot that, the DeVosses don't spend, that the Magic don't spend money. That might have been true 10 years ago. That might have been true during the rebuild, but rebuild teams shouldn't be paying the tax. This team, with how good the Magic think they can be, with the salaries that they're paying to Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs, your 3 key players, this is a tax team. This is a team that is over that line, is over that limit. no one can accuse the Magic of not spending money anymore. They're spending the money. Whether they're spending it smartly, we can debate that. But they are spending the money. So why obsess over the first apron? Why does it matter how much money you're spending? If it's just an extra financial penalty that the ownership's willing to pay, why does it matter? Well, because of all the extra spending that happened in the NBA and the owner's interest, which may not be an interest anymore, the owner's interest in creating a level playing field and some parity, the first apron comes with a lot more restrictions. We'll talk about what happens if the Magic blow past that $195 million mark coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why I love using Car Gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With more than 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the US. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. If you need a deal you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And their best feature are the price drop alerts, so you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. It's no wonder SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus, CarGurus.com, cargurus.com. So again, we touched on this a little bit in the podcast that I did with Keith Smith last week. So definitely go back and listen to that. It was a 3-parter, a Friday, Monday, Tuesday, 3-parter. Great conversation with Keith. I want to dive deeper into a little bit more, like explain a little bit more why the first apron is something you want to avoid. The Magic are not a complete team. I don't think I'm breaking news there. They need stuff. They need to do things. And being in the first apron really restricts your ability to do these things. So maybe you know how trades work, maybe you don't. Trades are an exchange, obviously, but usually trades, you have to match salary. Like when I say trades are a math problem, we're trying to figure out how to solve for X. I have I want to get a $25 million player. I'm going to give you roughly $25 million in return. That's typically how trades work. To take in more money in a trade, you have to have the cap room to take in that money. So you kind of use your cap room to eat up the extra money, or you have to be within the percentages. So like you can make a trade. Most teams are allowed to make trades at 120% of the value. So if I trade a $10 million player, I can bring back a $12 million player under most rules. Even if I'm over the tax, I'm allowed to do that, I believe. Let me check my handy dandy chart here, the red light chart. Yeah, that even if you're over the cap and over the tax, you're allowed to do that. Now, the first apron comes with other restrictions. And so it's important to know this. First rule of trading, you're always able to take back less money. So, Phoenix right now is a second apron team, and we'll talk a little bit about the second apron here in a minute. You're always allowed to take back less money. If the Nets want Kevin Durant back, they can trade Kevin Durant in his $38, $39 million contract and take back $15 million. And the Nets can absorb Kevin Durant into their cap room. It just has to be legal on both sides. So you can always take back less money. That's always kosher. That's always good. The Magic, though, obviously need to get more. And to get more, you got to give up something good, all those caveats. But if they do something that tips them into the first apron, then they got to follow all the first apron rules. So here are the big first apron rules. First, You still have the taxpayer MLE at 5.2 at 5 whatever million dollars I said earlier. You're hard capped at the second apron if you use that. Now, if you use the MLE, the hard cap is a hard cap. You cannot go over. You break the rules if you do that. If you're in the first apron, you can't acquire players via sign and trade. Sign and trades are much more complicated now. You essentially have to create the cap room through the trade to sign the player to that new deal. So like if so like I've seen people say, oh, why don't the Magic do a sign and trade for like Ty Jerome? Well, if Ty Jerome is expecting to make $15 million a year, well, you could trade Jonathan Isaac for him, and that would work if he were under contract, but you don't have $15 million of cap room to sign that player. So sign and trades are a lot more complicated, and you can't even attempt them if you're over the first apron, or if it puts you over the first apron. There are restrictions on which buyout players you can buy. They have to make less than the non-taxpayer MLE in the previous season. You have to match trades. This is the big one. If you are over the first apron, there is no wiggle room. You cannot take back more money than you send out. So like, let's say the Magic, and again, the order of how these things are operated matter too. So like you could do some cap manipulation. That happens. But like, let's say the Magic do go after Anthony Simons and they only want to give up Cole Anthony and someone else. Cole Anthony's only $13 million. Like Anthony Simons makes 28, 29. That's $15 extra million. That would put the Magic over the apron to take on $15 more million. And so that kind of trade would be illegal. You would not be able to execute that trade. Because if you're over the first apron, you cannot take back more money than you send out. You're capped at 100% in salary matching in a trade. So again, you can kind of see why the first, and there's more restrictive penalties for the tax and all that stuff. You can kind of see why avoiding the first apron for now is probably a good thing for the Magic. Because right now, they need to take on maybe a little bit more salary. Like we're talking about Anthony Simons. We're talking about him as a legitimate option. And to do that deal would be to take on another $28 million contract. We'll talk about other cap considerations here in a minute. The first apron, I don't think it would meaningfully change how the Magic operate. And honestly, I am expecting the Magic to operate as a first apron team for the next 2 years. And we'll get to why coming up here in a minute. I don't think it's so punitive that it prevents them from what they're doing, but it increases the pressure to get right this summer because getting right is important because now you can take back more money. You can go get a higher priced player to improve your roster. Like there are scenarios where you can grab Darius Garland without giving up Paolo, Franz, or Jalen Suggs. I have seen people make the math work. Now, whether Cleveland would take that deal or not, a debate for another day. But the Magic have the ability to go out and do something like that. It would have ramifications down the road. I want to talk a little bit about that coming up here in a minute. But if you're a first apron team, you can't do that. Because if you're a first apron team, you have to send out as much money as you bring back in, or send out more money than you bring back in to bring your payroll down. The Magic aren't there yet. They're looking to add. The teams that are cutting are the teams that are first apron teams. And frankly, like that's a lot of the moving and shaking this summer. A lot of the deals that are happening right now are first and second apron teams trying to cut payroll. So there is opportunity out there. Like Boston, heavy second apron team. Everyone anticipated that they would not be able to keep that team together for financial reasons, especially with new ownership coming in. They're expected to trade Kristaps Porzingis. They're expected to trade Drew Holiday. They're expected to trade Sam Hauser. Peyton Pritchard could be on the table. Boston is expected to make moves to cut their payroll. Phoenix, second apron team. Really hard for them to make moves. They're obviously expected to trade Kevin Durant. They'll probably cut payroll that way. They're trying to shop Bradley Beal. That's a huge payroll slashing move. Phoenix, like these are all the teams that are looking to make moves. Denver is expected to make moves. I would expect Michael Porter Jr. to be on the block this summer. Jamal Murray rumors are present. I don't think they'll move him I know I've seen some Magic fans interested in Jamal Murray. I don't think that'll happen, but it's on the table. This is the reality of the league now. The Milwaukee Bucks, same situation. This is the reality of the league, and making these deals happen is extremely difficult because second apron teams are much more restricted. They can't use MLE. They have no MLE available to them. They can't aggregate contracts, so they can't trade two players for one. They can't say, oh, we have a $10 million player and a $12 million player. Let's combine that into one $22 million player. You can't do that if you're over the second apron. They can't acquire players using TPEs. Traded player exceptions don't matter if you're over the second apron. They really can only re-sign their own free agents and sign minimum contracts and rookie contracts. That is it. And obviously, they can't take on more money in trades. They're heavily restricted in what they can do. And that's why you're starting to see these teams realign and reconfigure themselves. So obviously, those are big restrictions. And they're all on the horizon for the Magic. And teams can spend maybe 2 or 3 years in the second apron before things get really, really rough, as we're seeing with Boston, as we're seeing with Phoenix, as we're seeing with Milwaukee, even some other teams. The Magic have a dance to make. And so I'll talk a little bit about how cap considerations are going to affect the summer, even if the Magic avoid the first apron this year. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about the quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I was not a briefs person. I was a boxers person. I tried Skims, and I think I'm a briefs person now. Sorry, that's probably too much information, but that's not in the ad read. I'm just saying that because I really do love Skims. I actually ordered some more the other day. Underwear is uncomfortable. It's tough to find the right fit, the right comfort, or the right style. And Skims changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. Again, I've tried Skims. I was skeptical. I was not a briefs person, and now I'm a briefs person. I love my briefs. They're so comfortable. They give you such range of motion. They don't get stuck on anything. They shape you, which is a lot better. I'm hooked on the boxer brief. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com/lockedonnba and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. So again, we've talked a lot about these things theoretically. Like we've talked a lot about what the first apron means and how it's going to affect the Magic. It's all theory. And I've tried to give some examples and say, okay, this is how it could play. This is how it could shape. But this is the reality that the Magic are facing. Again, the era of free money is over. There's no easy spending. There's no just freewheeling spending. The Magic have to be careful. They have to think about what they're doing because things are going to change very, very quickly for them. Now, this year, looking at the numbers, at least the numbers that I have, I think the Magic can avoid the first apron. I'm not so concerned about first apron restrictions this year. It's next year when they're going to hit really hard. As we all know, Paolo Banchero is extension eligible, and the Magic will sign him to a max extension. If he makes All NBA next year, which I think we all expect him to, he'll make 30% of the salary cap. Now, that is not 30% of the 154. That's going to be 30% of, 10% of 150 is another 15 million. So that's about 30% of 170 million. 30, just doing the rough math again. These numbers get wild. Paolo's going to be the Magic's first $50 million player next year. Like, if not next year, then in 2 years. That's how much the cap is increasing. And it's going to increase like this for a while. And again, important point to note, unlike the Mavericks, who are scared of paying Luka a max off of his rookie deal, or he signed a max off his rookie deal, They're afraid to give him another max off that second deal. Important thing to remember for now, the salary cap is going to increase by 10% every year. Player contracts can only increase by 8% yearly. So the salary cap will increase faster than player contracts can. Now, what's different is the max contract for any player, in an extension at least, is 120%. I believe it's 120% of their previous salary. So that's where these numbers are going to start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's at the end of the contract that you got to worry about, okay, we're going to pay this guy a lot more than we were paying him before. And again, coming off a rookie contract, you sign that max extension. What we'll see is, teams trying to get guys to do what Jalen Brunson did, take less than the max to keep flexibility. We'll see how stars go for it. And again, the new, UCBA is 6-7 years away. I'm sure they will make tweaks to this system to try because of what's going to happen. They're going to study what happened and decide how to treat. So essentially, the Magic have a $50 million bill waiting for them next year. That's going to put them over the first apron. That could put them over the second apron next year, depending on what they do. A lot of the guys we've talked about as trade options, whether it's Anthony Simons, whether it's Colin Sexton, Kobe White, even Austin Reeves, all their contracts are getting set to expire. Anthony Simons has 1 year left at $28 million. If Magic fans who are obsessed with Anthony Simons, if Anthony Simons is the guy you want to chase this summer, you're not just bringing him in for this year, especially with all the assets you're going to have to trade to get him. You're going to sign him to an extension now. Or you're going to know what you want to pay him now. You're going to know you want to keep him for 4 more years or 3 more years or whatever it is. And that is a financial cost. The reason why I've said hey, why going after Kobe White would be tough because he's a $12 million contract who's going to probably double his salary. He'll be over 20, if not 24, 25 next year. And look, I think that the Magic are looking for a player in that $25 million range. You're essentially looking to, one of the reasons why I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is on the trade block this summer, the Magic are trying to swap salaries. I think they love the way their books are set up. You look at their books, you look at their contracts for this year. It's 14.5 for Jonathan Isaac. Probably an overpay, but 8.5% of the cap ain't killing you. It's 21.6 for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. 13.1 for Cole Anthony. 18.1 for Wendell. This is 2027. 2026, $15 million for Jonathan Isaac. 21.6 for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. 13.1 for Cole. 10.9 for Wendell Carter becomes 18.1 in 2027 when that 3-year extension kicks in. $11 million for Mo Wagner. 8.3 for Goga Batadze. $8 million for Anthony Black. They have a lot more movable contracts. And so I think the Magic have their books set up the way that they want them to. They just want to be able, so like Jeff Weltman said, we're in the business of swapping contracts right now. So the Magic would probably like to, honestly, upgrade Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He didn't give them what they needed. They need a little bit more creation and playmaking in the lineup. KCP doesn't do that. Again, we could debate what was available in the offseason last year. The Magic move on from him. They go in a different direction. They find something else. It's not crazy. It's not. But so if the Magic could swap out Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for Anthony Simons, you're only taking on $7 more million. You can deal with that. And again, that's 7 plus Mo Wagner's 11 keeps you under the first apron, gives you some flexibility this year. But next year, when you re-sign Anthony Simons to even let's say they keep him at the same amount, $28 million. Now you're a first apron team. Now you've tipped over the edge. Now you're spilling the cup a little bit. And that's the consideration the Magic have to give. As they're looking to acquire players, they have to think about not only what they're going to cost this year, but what that means next year, the year after, the year after. The reality is, again, the Magic aren't going to be a first apron team this year. I think the Magic will avoid the first apron this year. It is unavoidable next year with the kind of moves that we're expecting them to make. And whether the Magic stay in the first apron or how quickly they become a second apron team, That's going to be the biggest challenge for Jeff Weltman. In addition to, yes, building a team that can stay competitive. Orlando has salaries to trade. Again, I think you could criticize Jeff Weltman for a lot of things, and a lot of them are fair. He has done a good job setting up the Magic's books to be nimble when they face these restrictions. And honestly, as much as I think fans don't want to hear this, that was the goal last summer. The goal last summer was not necessarily to add the biggest name player or to make that last year's team or this year's team so amazing. It was, yes, there's a lot of faith and maybe misplaced faith in the Magic's own players. But it was about setting up the books to be nimble enough to make trades down the road. That's where the Magic are at. And I think the Magic are set up well, assuming players play to their expectations and play the way that they need to play. I think the Magic are set up well to do this. Now, we will see. Of course, we will see what happens down the road. But the Magic are in the tax. Welcome to the tax. Welcome to all the things you have to think about when you're in the tax. And we'll do another one of these episodes after the summer is completed to really assess where the Magic are at financially. But these are the things the Magic are balancing this year. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all family single podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, and you can also check us out on YouTube. Search for Locked On Magic. Nearing 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. Truly appreciate that. Keep subscribing. Keep coming in. Really appreciate that as well. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily, including a link to the handy-dandy red light, green light chart from Keith Smith of Spot Track. You can find that at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. For even more Orlando Magic content where I've started doing my player evaluations, check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to Locked On Magic, making it your first listen of the day, go make your second listen the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. There's really no better place to get set for the NBA draft, for the Magic still do have 2 picks in this draft. Check it out today. Check it out today at the Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. On our next episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to be doing an Eastern Conference Finals preview, but not the Eastern Conference Finals you're thinking of. We'll check you out tomorrow for that. Until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.